Coming up next, an interview with one of my favorite people in the world. This bar band came out of nowhere in the 80s to absolutely transcend radio. Fact is, this singer paid his dues for almost a decade and had a failed band and a failed record deal before he finally made it with his first hit at 33 years of age. But he stole the spotlight in the most competitive year in music. And the song that put him over the top for good was one the singer wrote in mere minutes. He was just driving along and the song came to him in a flash, so he quickly pulled over and ran to an office and screamed for a pen and paper and wrote it in about 90 seconds. It became a smash, but it's been sorely misunderstood over the years. Then later, it was part of a huge lawsuit when the biggest film of the year asked him to write a song for their soundtrack. And, when he had to decline because he already had prior commitment, they allegedly asked another artist to write a song with the exact sound of the one we're covering today. The legend's here to tell the story. It's all coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you love the history of music, coming straight from the artists who created the hits, you're going to want to be a full-time part of this channel. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the bell, check the box, whatever you have to do to get our daily features. So it's time for another episode from our series, Revelations. This is where featured artists reveal rare stories about the greatest songs and the greatest albums. On this installment of Revelations, we continue on with one of the coolest guys in music who really shook the 80s by its foundations. He had 2 massive albums back-to-back, as well as 11 top 10 hits, including 3 that went all the way to number 1. I'm talking about the only news source that I trust, Huey Lewis and the News. That started with Do You Believe in Love, which hit number 7 in 1982. Do you believe in love? And then he rocked 1984 with his multi-platinum mega record Sports, with huge hits like Heart and Soul, The Heart of Rock and Roll, and today's feature, I Want a New Drug. This is a song that he wrote in about 90 seconds, or maybe 2 minutes. He rushed into his lawyer's office after it came to him when he was in the car, and he begged for a pen and paper, and I'll let him tell the rest. However, one of the biggest parts of this song story, this number 1 hit that Weird Al parodied so brilliantly. I want a new duck, won't try to bite. It's the story of what happened after I Want a New Drug became a hit. Huey is actually barred from talking about it, but a matter of what we know. In 1984, the comedy Ghostbusters hit theaters and it blew up our culture like few movies before it. Ghostbusters. It was the biggest blockbuster, one of the greatest summer movie extravaganzas ever. And its theme song, of course sung by Ray Parker Jr., it ruled radio, hit number 1. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! So this has been a really touchy subject in the past, so I'll tread lightly here. According to some legends, several artists were approached by the Ghostbuster people to create a theme song that would need to have the word Ghostbusters in the chorus or the title. I've heard several people say that it's Huey Lewis. There was also Glenn Frey, Lindsey Buckingham. They were all offered to do it. All 3 of them declined for various reasons. Of course, Huey Lewis would say yes to a movie that came out the very next year. Of course, wrote Power of Love and Back in Time for Back to the Future. So they offered the song to Ray Parker Jr., who was coming off some great hits of his own. Ray Parker Jr. said yes. Now, Ray has never said that he purposely mimicked the song. However, according to Ledger Note, the filmmakers may have planted the seed of the sound of this song. Now, all this information that I'm sharing right now, I've known it for a while, but like I said, it's a sensitive subject, so I'm going to use exact sources that I found on the internet. According to the website Grunge, they said that Ledger Note reported that according to the now defunct magazine Premiere, the movie magazine, The film producers admitted in 2004 that they used the song I Want a New Drug as the temporary background music in certain scenes from the movie, including a clip that they actually sent to Ray Parker Jr. for inspiration. As the timeline suggests, this was after Huey Lewis declined the offer to write the theme song for Ghostbusters. So it seems even though the filmmakers couldn't work out a deal with Huey Lewis, they wanted to capture his band, The News, their super successful 80s corporate rock sound, or better yet, the good old bar band sound. I'm quoting what they're saying. I remember reading all this in premiere. Furthermore, according to NPR News, an agreement was reached in 1985, and the copyright dispute was settled out of court with the stipulation that no one talk about the details, ever. But then on an episode of Behind the Music, Huey Lewis actually did talk about it in a very public way. Then MTV said during a 2001 interview on VH1's Behind the Music, Huey pointed out, and I'm going to quote him exactly, the offensive part was not so much that Ray Parker Jr. had ripped the song off, it was kind of symbolic of an industry that wants something. They wanted our wave, and they wanted to buy it. It's not for sale. In the end, I suppose they were right. I suppose it was for sale because basically they bought it. So because the confidentiality agreement was apparently breached, Ray Parker Jr.'s lawsuit claimed it caused him emotional distress. An MTV reporter the suit said the confidentiality agreement directly related to Parker's comfort, happiness, and welfare. And they called Lewis's comments inflammatory, disparaging, and false. Later, Ray Parker Jr. was actually on the Adam Carolla show in 2016. He talked about it. Actually, I think this episode is still on YouTube if you look it up. I'll try to link to it. Ray said of the lawsuit, I sued him and I got money, adding, oh, by the way, I like him. I mean, I've never met him. For some reason, he attacked me and I don't really think I had anything to do with it, end of quote. To my ears, Ghostbusters sounds very similar to I Want a New Drug. Playing them back to back, I can hear it. What do you think?
I want a new drug, one that does what it should. Who you gonna call?
Now here's what we do know for sure. Both are songs from an era that gives us so much joy. I have to say also, Huey Lewis and Ray Parker Jr. are great guys. Back to I Want a New Drug. Like I said, it was the second single off of Sports. It reached number 6 on the Hot 100 and it actually went to number 1 in the dance club play charts. So in the past, Huey Lewis has said that it's really a love song. And the meaning of the word drug in the song was purposely open-ended. Now, to quote him exactly, he said, it's really a love song. It's not a pro-drug song. It's not really even an anti-drug song. The word drug sort of gets your attention. But I think in love relationships, there's more than I want you or I need you kind of thing. Now, interestingly enough, Huey has also maintained that he was heavily influenced by Purple Haze, by the Jimi Hendrix Experience with the recording of the song. He actually called the guitar riff at the end of the song a tip of the hat to Hendrix. So let's get into the interview so that Huey can tell you his part of it. Here's Huey Lewis with the story of I Want a New Drug. You guys have had a #1 hit on almost every different chart.
Right.
You know what that song is from the first guitar strain. There's so many hooks in that song. Mm-hmm. I always read that you wrote that just in a few minutes. You were on your way to your attorney's house.
Exactly.
Tell me that story. I love that.
Yeah, I was just woke up after a gig, and I had an early meeting with my lawyer and Bob Gordon for a publishing deal, and I didn't feel very good. And I drive in my car up there, and I had this idea for this song lyrically. And as soon as I walked in the door, he said, "Hey," I said, "Bob, give me a pencil and paper." And I literally wrote the whole song down. We put music to it, and we missed a couple times. And then Chris Hayes, my cohort, called me up one day. I remember I was home. He called me up. He says, "I got it." I said, "What?" "Want a New Drug, I got it." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Come on over." He says, "I'll be over." Came over. We put the little tape recorder. He played the lick. I sang it. And it was done.
One that makes me feel like I feel when I'm with you.
Well, the video echoes the origin story in a way.
Yeah.
Because you're driving along,
That's
and of
it.
course you got
That's
the
it.
classic black pants, the red jacket, the shades. I mean, that was the...
Well, I pinched the beginning off Harper.
Yeah, it's Paul Newman.
Paul Newman Harper, where the first opening scene, he's got the Porsche.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he's hung over, and he puts there's no coffee, so he takes the old coffee, puts it in there, gets it. He fills the thing with ice, puts his face in the ice.
I want a new job. One that won't hurt my head.
It's also, you listen to it now, it's fun to go back to listen to things as I get different ages in my 30s and my 40s, the songs have new meaning. It's kind of a bit of a funny indictment on the pharmaceutical industry. I know that wasn't the point, but
Right.
you see all those commercials all the time that talk about all the side effects from drugs.
Side effects may include unpleasant taste, headache, dizziness, and morning drowsiness.
33 years later, whatever
Yeah.
it's been,
Yeah.
it still resonates in that fashion.
Yeah, and I remember the label, the fun story with that was the label's all worried about want a new drug, you know. They were worried about the title. So the single that they didn't want it to be a single. They said it wasn't a single. Our first single was Heart and Soul. And I think the second single was New Drug, or
It was, yeah. I Want a New Drug was
and
second
they
single.
didn't want it. They were afraid of it because of the title.
I want a new job. One that won't hurt my head.
Because this was in the Just Say No era.
Exactly. And we
Reagan.
played a gig in New York City, and they came out, the record label and the people, and Want a New Drug was by far the most popular song. So then they decided they were going to make it a single. They would allow it to be a single, second single, but they put it out and said, I want a new drug, parentheses, called love. Because they were afraid people wouldn't get it. I said, hey, have you ever heard I've Got You Under My Skin?
No kidding.
Have you ever heard it? Listen to the lyrics sometime.
I've got you under my skin.
It has that perfect Huey Lewis in the News, but the saxophone and the guitar come together when the breakdown happens after you say, I'm alone with you, baby, and then it goes into that. That's what you guys did so well. That was so unique because I just can't think of anybody in that time that put those two together so well, saxophone and guitar.
That was the idea. The idea is to guitar relief a little bit with the horns. But the other dirty little secret about that song, you know, you look at that Sports album and it looks like a band in a pub just kind of jamming, just doing it rootsy, just playing. Want a New Drug is programmed piece by piece.
Sequence,
Starts
right?
with dum 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 dum. Yeah. Michael Wolff, the great Austrian producer, was next door doing We Built This City. And I said, hey, how do you do that with it? And he set up the track for us. So the bass was, now Billy played live drum overdubs and crashes and stuff. But this kick and snare and bass and were machined in there. And that was, this album, Sports, was assembled piece by piece. And since then, we've done records where there's no assembly at all. We've done them completely live. So we've recorded every which
How
way.
you did your first
Now,
record. Right?
First record
Yeah.
completely live. And then this one was the piece
Yeah.
together. And then after that, we started to make more live records again.
Well, as a kid hearing this on the radio, it sure sounded a lot like another record that came out a year after, but we won't talk about that.
Oh yeah, well, I can't.
You got asked to do something for the biggest blockbuster in 1984.
Right.
But you were already doing something for the biggest blockbuster.
Hold it, fellas. I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
Also, Weird Al covered,
Yeah.
did his version, I Want a
Yeah.
New Duck.
I want a new duck. One that won't try to bite.
And then Saturday Night Live, you played that on Saturday Night Live, and I read this a long time ago. You're the only person in the history of Saturday Night Live that ever announced your band on stage, that actually
Said the name of the band.
said the name of each band member.
Musical guest, Huey Lewis and the News.
Did you have to ask Lauren for that?
No, I
permission? You
I
did
used
it?
to do that every time. At the end, we hold a big sustain chord, and I go, "This is Johnny Cole, Chris Hayes, Billy
Yeah.
Gibson, blah blah," and I'm Huey Lewis, and you just heard the news. Yeah, I did that once somewhere, and my manager loved it, so
Yeah.
he said, "Do that all the time."
Yeah,
So
and that's the only time that's ever been done. And then, of course, it was Gleeified. Did you ever see it on when they did it on Glee?
Do I have to put my fingers in the holes?
The
Heard about it.
Simpsons,
When the home made me sick.
Beavis and Butthead.
Beavis and Butthead,
That was hilarious.
yeah,
Come on, give me the remote. This sucks. This isn't funny, butthead. Come on.
Family Guy. We got a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
Family
you've
Guys.
done. Yeah, there've been a lot in
Seth,
Family Guy.
Yeah.
Before I forget, I want my Huey Lewis CD back.
Well, I want a new drug.
Okay, at least you've been using it.
In the 60s, of course, FM radio came and played anything and everything, and they were hardly programmed. Disc jockeys would play their own music and all that stuff. But by 1980, everything was programmed. And the only format that mattered at all was called Contemporary Hit Radio, CHR. And that was probably 28 songs, not even 40. And by the way, if you were 28 or 27, you only got a play or two a day. If you were top 5, they played you 8 or 9 times a day. So radio was king. And we knew there was only one avenue to success. There was no jam band stuff, any of that. So
Right.
you had to have a hit single. And that was the hardest thing for us because we were kind of a rootsy band. My voice wasn't classic top 40 stuff. And we decided if we wanted to do that, we ought to do that ourselves because, you know, if the commerciality thing is a slippery slope and we wanted to maintain our integrity and all this stuff. So we convinced our manager, and then our manager convinced the record label that we should produce ourselves. So with Picture This, we began to aim songs at radio and learn how to make records for radio. And you remember in those days, everything had to be truncated.
Yep.
The idea, if you didn't get to the hook in 30 seconds,
Oh,
you were
yeah.
out of there. So that's why intros are smart. It's interesting, come the complete opposite of the jam band thing where everything was like,
Yeah.
so that's what we did. We chiseled and abbreviated and truncated and distilled and tried to make this
Yeah.
thing. And so we wrote songs of ours, most of the stuff we wrote, but I called Mutt just to cover our bases. And Mutt's a good friend of mine and said, "Hey, you got any songs, we could do?" And he sent, We both believe in love. And I rewrote the lyric a little bit and we cut it. And just as a kind of to make sure we had our bases covered, and it was our first single.
Do you believe in love? Do you believe in love? Do you?
We were a roots band. The idea was, how do we make this contemporary? What the stuff we love is soul music and R&B and early rock and roll and all that stuff. So how do we make this contemporary? So we used drum machines and which were brand new. In 1980, we heard that Roger Lynn had captured Jeff
Lynn drum
Piccaro's drums in a machine. What? Yeah, he's got Piccaro's drums in the. What do you mean? It's a chip. A chip? What's a chip? Oh, that's just a chip you put in. That's his. So you're kidding me. So we got to try that. And with the sports album, we aimed at fully 6 songs because "Do You Believe in Love" was kind of a hit, but that record sold, I think, 250,000 copies.
Yeah, went to number 7
when it came out, which was like break even because it was expensive in studio. So with the sports album, we really had to have a hit. We aimed 6 songs at radio. Radio was king. We knew we needed a hit. We didn't know we were going to have 6 of them.
Man, Huey is the best. What a storyteller. Make sure to leave us a comment about I Want a New Drug. And Huey, what do you think? Does Ghostbusters sound like I Want a New Drug? What are your memories about sports, about his songs, about Huey Lewis and the News? Their incredible run in the 80s. Let's have a great discussion below. If you dig our content, our videos, make sure to subscribe below so you never miss out. Make sure to look us up on Patreon for even more content. Help us keep the music alive. That's the idea here. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.